Geek Talk. Let's enjoy the show. Talaman always got a plan. Geek Talk is popping where it's really at. Represents geek culture, homie got structure. Sometimes it's vulgar, screw cats culture. Feel like Goofy, smart to say the least. Loving One Piece, man, really loves to eat. Everybody knows the show is really is Talaman. You know what time it is. Let's go, Geek Talk.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Geek Talk with Tyler, and as always, I'll be your host, Tyler. Today I'll be joined by another anime enthusiast, as well as podcaster, Tom. Tom, thanks so much for swinging by today.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Well, you invited me to your show, and I thought I'd return the favor, and it's always nice collaborating with a fellow enthusiast of Japanese animation. Speaking of whom, would you like to tell everybody about yourself, who you are, what you do, where they can find you, and all that other fun stuff?
Oh, definitely. My name's Thomas Bowman. I run multiple podcasts, and I have started up a little bit of a talk show every other Friday night. But my podcasts are From Friend to Weeb, which is my anime podcast where I show people animes they haven't seen and we discuss it. My newest podcast, which is releasing on the 31st of January, is called Talking Dirty, and that's just where I interview people about who they are and what makes them unique. And my talk show is on my Twitch channel, which just look on Twitch for Dirty Kaz, DERTYQAZ, and that is sort of in the works. So that needs some more time to be a little more stable. But yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me.
Awesome. Today's episode will be discussing about what it's like being an anime fan in the States. Tom, what would you say your first anime you've personally ever experienced and/or was the anime that really got you hooked onto the genre?
All right, so I, as many other 90s kids, grew up in the time where most of the anime you saw was probably on Toonami, which is where I saw most of the stuff I've seen, well, when I was a kid.
And now?
And, it was your Dragon Balls, your Gundam, and now? So, just watching the stuff on Toonami, and I didn't really have a big preference for it, because where I grew up, you didn't want to be the anime kid. So, I didn't watch it heavily. The one show that really stuck to me, though, and I only saw at the time, really, like, I'd watch anime like every other weekend when I was at my mom's house. But the one scene from anime that stuck with me is when Sanji was fighting Pearl on One Piece.
That was a great way to get hooked on One Piece. I assume, based on how far you were, you watched the 4Kids one?
It was the 4Kids dub, but I actually didn't even really watch the show. It was just that scene that stuck with me, and I really didn't get big into anime till maybe 10 years ago in my sort of early mid-20s.
I mean, that's understandable. We do get introduced to such fandoms, and due to the way life works, we tend to forget about them. But the great thing about modern technology is that, it's available on this platform and I can watch it then. Or if you're into pirating, no pun intended for One Piece, you can always catch it then.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what really opened me up to anime more is that, in the 90s, it was really just on Toonami. Or, a couple other channels had it. But nowadays, it's everywhere. I mean, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, I think, might have some at this point.
I don't think they do, and at this point, I kind of hope they don't. Because they got, the bizarro Midas touch. Everything they make turns to shit, as far as making the adaptations of such. I mean, their original content is very good. The stuff they already had, whether it's anything on the any of their movies, any of their TV shows, hashtag keep binging with gargoyles, and any of the other stuff they have. But once they get the rights to it, I kind of feel they just do it to appease the masses rather than stay true to the source material. But then again, if they did stay true to the source material, then we'd be getting Pinocchio's where Jiminy Cricket dies, Cinderella's where the stepsisters cut off their own feet, and Little Mermaid where the Ariel who would be named cannot English say, the mermaid who would be named Ariel would end up with Prince Eric, was it?
I think that was the main dude. Yep.
Yeah. So take that with whatever grain of salt you feel comfortable with.
Well, I mean, Disney did technically get the rights to Tokyo Revengers for season 2. Of course, it's releasing on Hulu, and they kept the same team, and it's been doing pretty well so far. I've enjoyed it. I was terrified once I heard Disney bought them out, but since they're releasing it on Hulu, I think, and they kept the original creators and animators and all that, I think it's going to be okay. But no, every time I hear Disney owns something, it is a little frightening.
But as long as they don't call any same-sex couple cousins, I think we should be relatively fine.
Yeah.
But as far as being an anime fan in the States go, yeah, let's take a look back at the brief history of anime. And I say brief because it's only been around since like the 60s, whereas characters like, say, Batman and Superman have been around since, I want to say, when America's really founding, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I guess modern America, it would be more accurate. But in the 60s, America got its first taste of anime, with that being Astro Boy. Say what you want about it, but it was definitely the pioneer, the granddaddy of all anime in the States.
Yeah, that was a pretty big one.
Which incidentally kind of gave birth to the King Kong show, the very first anime-inspired cartoon. Before we go any further into the history of anime, let's acknowledge the difference between animes and cartoons, shall we?
Oh, are we going to jump down this rabbit hole?
I think we need to, because a lot of people say they're anime fans. It's like, oh, I'm such an anime fan. I watched Avatar: Last Airbender.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's technically not an anime since it's a Western animation.
Well, hang on. I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
Shows like Samurai Jack, Jackie Chan Adventures, Avatar, Korra, I'm trying to think of another going off the top of my head, Boondocks. They're all anime inspired, but they're not anime. It's kind of like how a Beyond Burger is inspired by ground beef, but it's not a burger by any traditional means.
That's an interesting analogy.
Well, it is, and I kind of feel like the people that call themselves Avatar fans, anime fans because they watched Avatar, are also the same people who claim they're kosher even though you see them wolfing down bacon.
That's an interesting take on that. I like that analogy.
Well,
I'm always about food analogies, so.
Well, if the dots are there. You just got to find the best way to connect them.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, yes, technically Avatar is an anime. And I'm probably going to get some weird comments like, but didn't you just say it wasn't? I did. But technically it is, and here's why I say that. Anime, when we think of anime, we think of shows like Dragon Ball, we think of One Piece, Naruto, pretty much anything you've seen in the Toonami lineup at one point or another. But by legal definition, anime just refers to anything that's animated. So if you're going to accept shows like Avatar, Jackie Chan Adventures, Samurai Jack, Boondocks, etc., as anime, then you have to start accepting shows like Popeye, the Flintstones, the Jetsons as anime too.
Yeah, I guess.
So to answer it, it's kind of like a what was the dude with the cat? He was a German scientist. It was like Schrodinger's cat. It is anime while simultaneously it's not anime.
Yeah. So what would you say makes an anime an anime?
Well, if we go by the latter of the two definitions, pretty much anything that's animated. But if we're going to go by what we think of it as, then obviously the key component would have to be animated in Japan. So Generation 1 Transformers is much more of an anime than, say, Avatar or even Korra would be. Well, granted, they do have some anime-inspired influences, not just within the animation show, but in terms of the character development or the parenting, or in some cases, lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
Which I gotta say, that's a very common trope in anime: shitty parenting. You ever notice that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That is a pretty big one. I mean, you can just look at most anime protagonists, and they have some sort of mommy or daddy issue.
Right, or in the case of Luffy, oh wait, I have a dad?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I have one.
That's actually a thing? I didn't just spawn from the ground?
Yeah. And I mean, we still don't know who his mother is. His grandpa just left him with some
Bandits?
bandits. Yeah.
Well, I
Beat
mean,
him.
if your grandson was the child of a rebel, there's a good chance that they'd want them dead. So it was a for his safety kind of a thing?
Maybe. Or Garp just was lazy.
Garp's many things, but lazy isn't one of them.
I don't know. At least lazy with his grandson. Unless it comes to beating him.
Yes, because nobody hurts harder than the fist of love.
Nope.
Which I
He has
know
that
that sounds
special
out of
hockey.
context, but go for it.
Yep.
Though I do find it funny in the latest chapters that he's willing to rescue Kobe, but he couldn't rescue Ace.
Yeah, that. I don't want to. That's a whole topic for a whole nother conversation.
No, it is. And if memory serves, we're serving how Avatar does have several anime-inspired influences. But
Mm-hmm.
even as much as, say, Hayao Miyazaki doesn't want to refer to his works as anime, technically they are. He just doesn't want to refer to it as such.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a little upsetting, but all things considered, how anime is turning for more of a mainstream venue, I can definitely see why. The Ghiblis are legally an anime, but they are their own separate branch, their own thing. And if you go to any convention that focuses on anime, like Anime NYC or Otakon, you're going to see some Ghibli cosplayers.
Yeah.
So I think that's the overall big difference between anime and cartoons. So yeah, shows like Transformers or the Ghibli films. While granted, they're dubbed by Disney and they did do really well. Having several famous or big name actors voicing them, including Keith David. They had John DiMaggio, and I think in a couple of them. Mark Hamill at one point or another, the dad from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Mm-hmm.
Any other names you feel like were worth mentioning within the Ghibli voices?
Oh, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but
They're there, but it's just, oh, Clancy Brown, who was in Pompoko.
yeah.
But I think a lot of the times we do, when, it's another thing, when content gets transitioned, I should say, to the States, a lot of the times people find the fact that it's in another language without subtitles off-putting. And even when you do give them subtitles, they don't want to, and I quote, read and watch TV at the same time.
Yeah, which I mean, it's understandable.
It is, but I just find it funny that all these stereotype anime fans, like, you have to watch it in its original content to get the oral message. It's like, bitch, you don't speak Japanese.
Yeah, yeah. Which I mean, I've heard plenty of people in Japanese complain about the animes as if like how we complain about how the dubs sort of sound. So
Well, I think that really depends on the dub. Whether it's like 4Kids dubbing, where they just westernize the shit out of everything, okay, you know what, that's actually a recognizable complaint. But to be fair, this was the 90s, and internet wasn't as readily accessible as it is today.
yeah, I mean the dubs are really good nowadays.
Oh,
So
phenomenal.
I mean, I mean nothing against dub voice actors; they are amazing, and props to them for all they do. I'm just saying, a lot of people like to complain about the dub. Those sub advocates like to complain about the dub because they don't seem like it feels right. Which I mean, I can sort of understand. Like when I normally I watch anime in sub, just because hearing in the Japanese, the lips and everything, it's accurate. It feels
It
a little
feels more
nice.
authentic, essentially.
Yeah, but I have no issue watching something in dub. I just personally I prefer sub, but I always watch dub as well. Like I'm back and forth. It just depends on
Honestly,
what
it
I'm
really
doing.
depends on the anime. Like anything with a more westernized feel to it, like say Trigun, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Trying to think of another good one the one we recorded the episode for, Sherlock Hound, that
Oh,
has a
yep.
more western feel to it. It kind of makes sense to watch it in the English dub. But if it's
Mhm.
anything with a more Japanese feel to it, like say your Demon Slayers, Chainsaw Man's, One Piece, which I guess that one would be debatable because it has its own world building shtick. Um,
Yeah.
but even and then, as long as we don't get to see Sanji smoking a lollipop, we're all good.
Oh, the good old lollipop scenes.
Yeah, which kind of funny enough, Gintama actually references a little.
Yeah.
There's actually a scene where Gintoki, I believe his name is, looks like he's smoking a cigarette. He's like, "Hey, buddy, you can't smoke that here." No, dude, I'm just having a lollipop. What do you mean? I can actually see smoke coming out. And he takes it out. It's like, yeah, that's because I'm smoking it really, really fast, or licking it really, really fast.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's kind of a notch, but say what you want about Four Kids. Brock's jelly donuts, Sanji's lollipops, Zoro's dad jokes, the quote unquote shadow realm, etc., etc. It did serve as a good gateway for many modern anime fans, and it will hold a special place in our hearts.
Oh yeah. I mean, Four Kids was there. It was the sort of main factor getting anime into the States at the time because of how new, I guess you would mean, not necessarily new since anime started in the 60s and whatnot,
New
but
to us,
yeah,
prospectively,
new to
but it did.
us.
I think that's when anime really started becoming more mainstream.
Hmm.
I mean, granted, it was like the timeline of anime is very weird, and I say that because can you name any 60s anime besides Astro Boy, Speed Racer, or Kimber the White Lion?
Off the top of my head, no.
Exactly. But if I say, can you name me an anime that was released last year? I'm sure you could do that with no problem, right?
Hmm. I think a lot of that, I mean, 90s, we were getting the Four Kids dubs and they were really pushing it onto the Western media, which is, I think, how it all sort of started. But then the internet came and improvements to the internet came, which led to improvements of communication throughout the world, which now leads us to the fact that anime is everywhere and it's super popular nowadays.
But the real question is anime mainstream? I would like to say yes and no on that. What are your thoughts on
It's
this?
yes. I would honestly, I feel like it is a lot more mainstream nowadays. I mean, it's not as big as other shows. Like you're not getting the big coverage like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or whatever. Like when Amazon drops these new big hitters, but it's getting to that point where it is. You'll see a lot more anime stuff mixed in now than you normally would. So I think it's getting close to being mainstream.
Close, but not there. Like when you this is the problem I have with Marvel nowadays. For starters, Marvel actually had their own batch of excuse me, quote unquote original anime, but it was just their previous already existing series, just with a new coat of paint.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm going to say about that is that when people say they're Marvel fans, I ask them, "Oh, who are you hoping to see for the MCU?" They're like, "Wait, who in the what?" And like, "Oh, okay, so you're one of those movie fans."
Yeah.
And honestly, I kind of feel like anime faces that similar issue. It's like when they're anime fans, they're going to say, "I really like Jackie Chan Adventures. Or I like Boondocks." But it's like, okay, but can you name me an anime that's actually an anime that's not part of the big three right now? And for those speaking, the big three anime of the decades. And this has actually gotten some controversy. So let's look back at which each one of the original big three were. When it started, the concept became a thing. It was the late 80s, I want to say.
Yeah, I think so. Around there.
Okay, so let's say late 80s, early 90s. The big three then were Sailor Moon, Yu Yu Hakusho, and Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
Then we get the transition to the next decade, and the big three for then are One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach.
Mm-hmm.
Then
And
Sorry, go ahead.
Also, there's a lot of big controversy. Everyone thinks, oh no, Dragon Ball is in the 90s big three. And it's like, well, no, it was before the 90s sort of big three. Well, I mean, if you want to put 90s to 2000s, early thousands sort
Yeah,
of range.
and Dragon Ball are without a doubt started in the 80s, while simultaneously, there's no doubt in my mind it became more popular in the 90s. So I
Yeah.
do see the confusion, but no. The big three, the original big three, were Yu Yu Hakusho, Sailor Moon, and Dragon Ball, respectively.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Dragon Ball Z, if we're going to be technical. The original Dragon Ball is a whole different breed of animal. Like, if it was released today, it would be an Eki.
Yeah.
So we have the Shonen Big Three: One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, and then after that, we got the when anime starts becoming more mainstream. Those big three: My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, and Chainsaw Man.
Yeah, you think Chainsaw Man is going to be pushing into the top three now?
I do. I feel like that everyone's talking about Chainsaw Man. It's definitely had its hype for a while, although I guess I kind of skipped one. What would you say the big three between the Pirate Ninja Swordsman trio versus the Hero Chainsaw Head? I guess, I don't know, Token. The Demon Slayer one, was it? Yeah, it was Demon Slayer.
What? No, sorry. What was the question again? Who I feel is the big three?
Between those two eras, because a lot of anime definitely spawned between those two time frames.
See, that would be tough because this is sort of the era where I'm a little blank in.
That's okay. So let's just say those are the main big threes. I'm just glad it's not Boruto. It's when you see
Yeah.
Naruto's origin compared to Boruto's, it's like, okay, you don't spend enough time with your dad because he works. And Naruto's like, bitch, be glad you had a dad.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
granted, they'll never say that in the show, but I don't know. It was like, if Samuel L. Jackson gets his hold of anime, he'd probably say that.
Now, I'd almost say Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man might be a little bit tied for that position.
I can see the arguableness of it, but I've definitely seen more Chainsaw Man cosplayers than Jujutsu Kaisen cosplayers.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I just feel, you know, Jujutsu Kaisen was huge, and it still is. I mean, people are eager for the next season to pop out. Chainsaw Man was great, but I feel I had or heard more hype for Jujutsu Kaisen than Chainsaw Man, and I've enjoyed both of them. They're both really good, but I feel that one's sort of a toss up for me. Personally, I would replace Demon Slayer because I didn't care for it. That's my big take, but
Yeah, I
I know
feel
it's a
like
big
it's
one.
definitely one of those animes that gets more hype than it necessarily needs.
Yeah, but I mean, I can see, yeah, it with how much the fans love it, it deserves its spot. But personally, I'd probably switch it out with like Fire Force or maybe would Black Clover fit in this era, or would
No,
that be one for a
I
previous?
think that would be like a previous one that goes along with Fairy Tail, maybe.
Yeah,
Which again, I think there's so many different animes, there's so many anime ripoffs. I think Fairy Tail definitely has its fair share of anime ripoffs. If you don't believe me, look at a picture of Shanks and then look at a picture of Gildarts.
yeah, you could see it.
Honestly, it just feels like the same power of friendship bullshit you see with pretty much any series nowadays,
Oh yeah,
which they really play into. But a good thing with anime like that is that it serves as another gateway for many of the anime fans we have nowadays.
yeah,
I mean, it may be a more recent example by comparison, but it's still a good gateway series if you're just starting to get into the, what would you call it, the culture of anime or the genre of anime?
yeah. I think one of the first animes I jumped into when I started watching was, in fact, Fairy Tail. When once I started getting big into watching anime, it was Fairy Tail. And of course, started filling it in with classics like the Brotherhood, the Brotherhood, Death Note, all these other ones. So I mean, yeah, Fairy Tail is as much crap as Fairy Tail gets. It is a decent starting anime, I'd say.
Like I wouldn't if you have a veteran anime fan that's looking for a good anime, I wouldn't recommend them Fairy Tail. I would actually
Oh no,
recommend
no.
them something more underrated in my opinion. Have you heard of the anime Heaven's Design Team?
Heard of it, yes. Seen anything of it, no.
In a nutshell, it's basically if biology and engineering had a love child.
Huh.
It
Interesting.
basically explains why many of the animals are the way they are.
Hmm.
I think that's a nice, interesting take, and I think many there's many turnoffs on anime, I should say, is the amount of fan service we get, and I don't mean the good fan service, like say
Uh,
the Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover. That's good fan service because it's got everything the fans of both series want. Crossovers, the oh wait, I'm not actually the enemy, this guy's the enemy kind of thing. So you want to team up? We've seen several times, and my personal favorite, the Arkham mutants getting mutated.
yeah, no, anime is good at sexualizing everybody.
Yes, the infamous "Don't break Rule 46."
Yeah.
Which, look, I get it. Japan, by and large, is a more sheltered culture. There's an anime which I admit is a little dirty, and I'm using that term loosely. It's called Shimoneta, that represents Japan well. When you tell somebody that they can't do something for so long, the energy just builds up, and then it explodes. So
Hmm.
Shimoneta is a perfect example of such. But that's
Oh, yes.
but
I meant to start watching that one because I thought it sounded funny.
it is kind of funny. Honestly, I read this while it takes place in Japan. I kind of recommend this one dubbed.
Okay.
And there's a reason to that madness. It's just okay, this is a similar issue Ghost Stories has. You remember Ghost Stories?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Remember ghost stories.
Okay, and for those of you that don't know, first off, check off my Ghost Stories Halloween episode for my podcast. Um, Second, I say this one particularly because it kind of went through the same changes 4Kids went for their anime, but it had a different origin story, and here's why. The concept of ghost stories is basically 4 kids solving Scooby Doo esque mysteries with ghosts, and it was wholesome. Problem was, it didn't do so well in Japan. So when it made to the States, Japan's like, okay, look, change this however you see fit or however you need to, but just try to keep the overall focus on, I want to make fun of gays and Jews and black people. But no, we're making fun of everybody. So it kind of turned to the 4 kids from South Park solving Scooby Doo esque mysteries.
Yeah. Yep, that one was an interesting one.
It was, and whether it's the same way Monica Rial's character says, have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior? The same way a New Yorker would order a breakfast sandwich? The whole constant Jew poking, or even making that one kid quote unquote retarded, or even breaking the fourth wall sometimes. Like one of the quotes they said was, because of the bad animation, where did my teeth go?
Oh man.
I think they just had full creative liberties with that, and they did that well, and it definitely stands out as one of the most recommended dubbed anime of all time.
Yeah.
But I do know some fans that prefer the original content. I don't know why. This one makes me laugh every freaking time, especially with the bunny episode, if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, some of those, yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird transitions of when anime makes the States. But then again, Japan's not exactly in the clear of this either. Have you ever seen Beast Wars?
Unfortunately, I remember some of Beast Wars.
What do you mean, unfortunately?
Well, I mean that's one of those animes or shows. Now, are you talking? You're not
The
talking
ori-
trans.
the
Yeah.
original Transformers Beast Wars, not the two Japanese spin-offs.
Okay. Yeah, I remember Beast Wars as a kid, and I don't know. I guess at the time I wasn't really into mechs. So I didn't have a good memory from Beast Wars or Transformers or Gundam because, as a kid, I wasn't really into the robot mech stuff.
Yeah, it's one of those unique things you get from anime. They really love their robots and giant monsters.
Mm-hmm.
But I say that specifically because when Japan made it to the States, or sorry, when Beast Wars made it to Japan, it also got a redubbing and it made it more comical. They even changed the genders of one of the characters at one point, and thus inadvertently giving birth to the first same-sex couple within the Transformers lore. Believe it or not.
Interesting.
They made Tigatron kind of like a samurai-esque character with a noble sense of honor, which we kind of see from American Dinobot. But then we have Air who in the original series was a female Maximal, but they changed it to male and kind of made made Air Tigatron's young ward. Unbeknownst to Japan, they actually had a relationship, thus making them the first inadvertent same-sex couple.
Well, ain't that funny?
I think that's an interesting take on that. So yes, as much shit as you're going to give on America for completely changing the script for Japanese content, Japan's not exactly innocent either.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a whole barrier issue, not only of just language differences and word differences, but as well as, what they can share and what's not, shareable. It's sort of like the idea, a lot of animes portray, these 16 to 18-year-olds as more of adults because that's how it is in Japan, where we see it as more, it's like, well, they're still children. And there's that big barrier issue with that whole topic, which, of course, they very sexualize everybody. So sometimes it makes you feel weird watching these shows when those are for the States, those are kids, whereas Japan, they're seen more as adults.
Yes, because honestly, look, for those of you that don't know, and not that I agree with this, honestly, the age of consent in Japan is 14. Biologically, it does make some degree of sense, but when you take the mental and emotional concept of physical intimacy into account, it absolutely does not.
Yeah.
So I think that's why Japan had that rule, because they're thinking more, okay, so physically you're capable of doing so, but mentally and emotionally you're not.
It's just one of those cultural differences that is hard to transfer back and forth from different cultures. Which you see a lot of issues when it comes to shows being fitted from Japan to America or vice versa or other countries. There's a lot of different factors.
I think that also goes for many of the other countries that gets transferred to the States for one reason or another. Mm-hmm. Like, you remember the movie Watership Down?
I've probably seen it. It sounds familiar. I'd have to
the rabbit movie that's extremely gory.
Let me do a quick.
Well, yeah, it's gory. But apparently in Europe, or specifically England, it got a U rating. Not something I would have given it today. And keep in mind, yes, you could argue that this was a 70s thing. I still wouldn't have given it the U rating. PG-13 at worst.
Yeah.
Very gruesome. But focusing other cultures aside, let's actually talk about being an anime fan in the States.
Okay.
Obviously, when you think of cliche geeks, you think of people like the guys from The Big Bang Theory, comic book guy from The Simpsons. Any other stereotype geeks you can think off the top of your head?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I was going to say The Big Bang Theory because that's the biggest, I think, probably the more popular opinion people could look at when you're saying geeks and stuff. You can see them.
Yeah, I just find it funny that none of them are fat. When you think of geeks, you think at least one heavier set guy.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, the heaviest one, at least the bulkiest one I can think of is possibly Leonard. but he's got a good amount of muscle on him.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess the idea of Penny marrying a morbidly obese fat guy just wouldn't work with her character.
Yeah, no, probably not. That would ruin half the show.
Yeah, it probably would have. And honestly, here's my biggest Big Bang Theory is funny. It's good. It's a nice segue into actual geek culture, but I don't think they really represented well. They just focused on the mainstream stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, the only anime references I can really recall from that was they had if you pay attention, background, there is a promo thing for Bleach. Sheldon briefly makes a reference to Pokemon, which, yes, technically is an anime. And when they were sitting down with Penny watching an anime, they weren't even watching an existing anime. They just watched a made up anime. And yes, I know made up anime sounds weird. It's like, but anime is already made up. Yes, people create anime. It's not like a deer in the road. It's like, holy shit, I'm going to hit an anime. It's like, no, it's an anime that doesn't exist. They made it specifically for that show. Now, had they decided to make an anime based off that, okay, you know what, that would be kind of nice. But they haven't. And at this point, I don't think they ever will.
Yeah.
So those are the big three anime, really the big three anime homages. I mean, when there was the costume party, they said we can dress up as anybody, and they say anime, and yet none of them dress up as an anime character.
Yeah.
So I think it was more mainstream. Case in point with the episode where Mark Hamill marries Amy and Sheldon. They've only focused on the Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, they don't really push a lot of, at least not yet, anime into shows when it comes to looking at like what you think is a geek or a nerd. It's more or less comic books, superheroes, D&D.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much the big three nowadays. Whereas anime is its own subgenre. And seriously, do not get me started on the can he beat Goku memes.
Oh boy.
Though I will say, as much as we've taken inspiration from anime has definitely taken inspiration from us. My Hero Academia is definitely the biggest example thereof. It's the because your friend likes the MCU or that Disney film Sky High, you must therefore like My Hero Academia.
Yeah, and I mean it's sort of true. My first episode of one of my podcasts, I showed my friend who's a big comic book nerd, superhero guy. I showed him My Hero, and he loved it.
Exactly. Which again could arguably be good dubbed or subbed. Say what you want
Yes.
about the dubbed anime, but there's no doubt in my mind that the people that do the voices are well talented.
Oh, they are. They are very talented.
Whether you're watching Ocean dub, or you're watching Funimation, Viz Media dub, or even 4Kids, they're just going along with the script. And just because you have a talented person in that doesn't necessarily make the content good. Case in point, they got Patrick Stewart to voice a piece of crap in the Emoji Movie. And I don't mean like he's a degrading, unredeemable character. I mean, he literally voices the poop emoji.
Yeah.
Which, again, another thing in the anime world we need to talk about is localization. I'm going to briefly get into that because I have an episode that talks about it. But remember when we called rice balls jelly donuts?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they kind of did the same thing for other media. Like, case in point with many of the Disney movies. When Disney made it to other countries, do you remember Zootopia?
Yes.
Okay, so there was a scene with two anchors. The first one was a snow leopard, and the first one was originally a moose. But that was only for Canada and the US. When it got to the other countries, it was a panda in China. It was a jaguar in Central and South America. It was a tanuki in Japan with a leaf on its head. And so basically, it was changed to match the different animals more familiar with the country. Of course, internet's a thing now, so you can just look it up, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, and I think it's pretty cool that they do try to do stuff like that to make it a little more fitting for wherever it's being broadcasted.
Honestly, I just find it funny when people give shit on 4Kids for doing that, but when they do it to the other states, it's like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Another example of such is the movie Inside Out, if you remember that. When
Mhm.
Riley made it to California, there was broccoli pizza, and kids do not like broccoli. I'm personally not a fan of it. Not even if it was deep fried and smothered in chocolate, I would not eat broccoli.
I just don't know if broccoli would be good covered in chocolate.
Well, technically that was a Seinfeld quote, but that being said, yes, I do. When it, for whatever reason, kids in Japan like broccoli. I'm not taste shaming. I just don't understand it. So they changed it to make something less appealing. And believe it or not, bell peppers.
Hmm.
I mean, I like bell peppers more than broccoli, but that's just me.
It depends on how it's cooked.
Well, being based on that logic, anything can be just depending on how it's good. But another thing good about anime, as I've said in many episodes, is opening to Japanese culture, whether it's its food, its mannerisms, or various forms of mythology.
Hmm. Yeah, you get some of that culture that, being in the States, a lot of people don't have the privilege or opportunity to go see other cultures, other countries. So watching anime, you do get a glimpse of these cultures and practices that they celebrate and whatnot.
Absolutely. One famous case of that, again, I'm going back to One Piece, is One Piece, because it kind of gives you an idea of how Japanese individuals think. Case in
Mm-hmm.
point, we have Kaido's the Beast Pirates. A lot of his subordinates are dragon fruit members, but they turn into dinosaurs. Because in Japan, the same word for dinosaur is the same word for dragon. So you think, oh, Kaido turns into a dragon, so he must have eaten a dragon fruit. Nope. He ate the fish fruit, which I guess is an homage to the tale of how the carp swam upstream that
Mm-hmm.
essentially ascended into dragonhood. Something that's reflected not only in the entrance to Wano, but the Pokemon as well has kind of done that, which explains how Magikarp has evolved into Gyarados.
Yeah. And that is, like I said, when I first played Pokemon, I had no idea. I was like, oh, cool, this guy just evolves to this epic thing. I had no real meaning of that until you're able to understand other cultures. But you said as a kid in the States, you don't really get that much opportunity.
Right. I'm
So,
going to address Pokemon briefly for a second. Um, One Piece is another example of where we look at one word and we're very specific with that word. Like,
mhm.
say, different types of facial hair, sideburns, Fu Manchus, mutton chops, etc., etc. Whereas Japan, they just have one word covering all different types of facial hair,
Mm-hmm.
which explains why white beard doesn't have a beard.
Yep. It's just the mustache.
Yes, the big gravity defying mustache. I don't know
Still
if he.
beautiful though.
Oh, absolutely. Even if it was slightly burned off by the censorship that existed.
Yeah. The good old censorship of that fight.
But I don't want to dive too well into the censorship. That's just another example of how Easterners think versus Westerners, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
They have more generic terms, whereas America has more specific terms,
Yeah.
which is something I've noticed. I guess which to the dragon fruit or Kaido's quote unquote dragon fruit has proven,
Yeah.
as well as the naming thereof. I just find it funny when we look at Naruto, a place that essentially it takes place in its own world, but obviously it's derived of Japanese culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we have
It's kind of a
characters like Naruto Uzumaki,
yeah.
and I say it specifically that way because saying your first name and your last name, that's a Western concept. Whereas in the East, it's usually the surname and then your proper name.
Yeah.
And One Piece has proven that with Monkey D. Luffy.
His name's really Luffy D Monkey,
Yes, if it was in the
which
States.
sounds weird.
Yeah, because we're so accustomed to Monkey D. Luffy.
Yep.
But that's just one example thereof. And when we look at animals, many of the times we associate animals with good and bad. Case in point, foxes are seen as malicious animals. Brer Fox and the fox from Pinocchio are two perfect examples as such. Sneaky, crafty, just looking to kill to get a meal kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the East, they're much more benevolent creatures, and I do briefly compare foxes to dragons in my dragon episode I did with quick shout out to Daniel M. Orsino, Birth of the Fae series.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing, certain animals depict certain type of things, and it makes you wonder, like, how does that come about? Like, so, like, the fox, that's sort of more, you see, like, with the nine-tailed fox with Naruto.
Right, which is something I never understood when Pokemon came out originally, like back when I was a kid. Nowadays, okay, yeah, that's just a kitsune, as it's called, would kind of be like our griffins.
Yeah.
It's just something we're so used to.
Which
thought occurs, if somebody ate a devil fruit that turns them into a griffin, would it be a cat fruit or a bird fruit?
Oh, that is a tough one.
Right? I mean, pretty much every other cat-based mythological creature makes sense. Like cat model Nemean lion, cat model Chimera, cat model Raiju, and so on and so forth. But the griffin is the one I'm not entirely sure where it would be.
That would be that'd be tough. I don't know, because yeah.
I mean, it's obviously got ties to both lions and eagles, but que sera.
Yeah, I don't know. That would maybe we should write Oda, see if he puts it in a one of his SBSs.
Well, if you when you do, let me know, or if you can give me his email or whatever, and I can do it. Either way, as long as this question gets answered.
Right.
So, if I was going to take a stab at it, I would probably say cat fruit model griffin, because it's kind of like Silverbolt from Beast Wars. Obviously, the base is the wolf, but it does have eagle parts to it. Same thing with the griffin. The base is that of a lion, but it just has parts like an eagle.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that being more, since it's majority lion in the sense of appearance. So, yeah, it probably would be more cat fruit.
Yeah, but if it was a bird, that wouldn't offend or surprise me either way.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
No, but, which again, this is something we need to talk about, the degrees of anime fandom. We have the dubbers, the subbers, the manga-based anime fans, and I know manga and anime are its own separate content, but many people that do like anime also do like manga. So there are those fans, but when people think of anime, they think of big names like Dragon Ball and Naruto, but those are the shonen anime. There are many, like films and TV shows, there are many subgenres of anime. We got your shoujo, you're targeted towards women, even though the fandom's not always the case as such. We got your seinens, the ekis, the horrors, etc., etc. So it's just knowing the right person you would recommend which anime for.
Yeah, anime is widely adapted into many different genres, just like any type of American TV would be. And I mean, and probably even more so, more diverse when it comes to genres, I'd say.
Well, yeah, anime has more original content, Japan has more original content than, say, the Western parts, because everything nowadays gets rebooted. Do not get me started on that Velma crap. I couldn't even sit through the first episode.
Yeah. See, America likes to just reboot things and stay with stuff that they liked, and it ruins the shows. Whereas, you got Japan making millions of new things.
Well, yeah, but there are times where anime has done a reboot. Full Metal Alchemist, Hellsing, Fruits Baskets, Yurusei Yatsura, just to name a few, but there aren't a lot of anime reboots. I'd say there are more anime continuations than there are reboots.
Yeah. Definitely so. And there's more new animes than, reboots or this or that.
Granted, a lot of the times when everything's in a particular genre, it just feels like the same thing. Seriously, like how many isekais takes them into a fantasy world, and the original guy was either a teenager or a stay-at-home nobody.
Yeah, I mean, you got your typical setup for him, but
still, it's its own separate entity. Then again, I guess the same thing could be said for any superhero genre. It's like, oh, just a mild-mannered business man by day, superhero by night, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
which honestly, that's something they should talk about. And anime has gotten more positive lighting over the years, but when Tom, I'm not sure how old you are, but when I was a kid, it was definitely not favored upon.
Oh no, where I grew up, you did not want to be that kid.
Nobody wanted to be that kid, but I can, and I probably was that kid, but I know at least everybody knows at least one anime fan.
Yeah, well, see, it was one of those situations like everybody watched it, but it
Well,
wasn't the cool thing to bring to school, so you never talked about it. Besides, like that one or a couple of kids, and they took it too far.
they
And I mean,
really did,
it's like
especially
the
Rule
same thing as like
46.
yeah, but it's like the same thing as comic books in the '80s, and stuff. They weren't you didn't want to be that kid, but
And honestly, it's kind of insulting when people who didn't start off that way are now adapting it as their own. I kind of feel like that's in a way cultural appropriation.
yeah, yep. Same people that picked on you for watching something are now obsessed by it and make it the personality.
I mean, granted, it's a transition. It just kind of feels a little hypocritical. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but no, it's definitely a lot more normalized now, and more open, more varied, and more people are enjoying it, which is nice to see. Like it's good to have other
Oh
people in
no,
the
it
hobby.
absolutely is nice to see anime and its subsequent fans in a more positive lighting. But even the way it's represented in media, it's usually just some fat middle-aged man living in his parents' basement.
Yeah, with the samurai sword and the fedora, the neck beard, and just milady.
Pretty much that's a good example. Or do you remember that god awful Jellystone TV show?
Jellystone?
Yeah, it's
No.
basically a reboot of how all the characters from Hanna-Barbera live in this one area, and it was a real downgrade. But they made Peter Potamus into a cliche anime fan.
Huh.
Yeah, he's like, oh boy, we're gonna sit around and watch OVAs and bake cookies, and then you see a lot of catgirl stuff, including the body pillow.
I almost want to watch it just to see what it is
I would
now.
just watch that scene. The series overall is not that worthwhile. Which again is kind of a downside of American reboots, is that they're a lot toned down.
Yeah.
The original counterpart. Another reboot I personally don't recommend for the States is Watership Down. One reason specifically is that these rabbits were in a new area and they realized, oh, we don't have any females, so we can't continue the population. Which, okay, I get. You really can't say that for a kids show nowadays. But the reason they said it in the reboot was, oh, we need female rabbits to dig the burrows. It's like, are you incapable of digging a burrow?
Yeah. That's probably one I'll never watch for the
It's not.
Americanized reboot.
Well, yeah, it's a Netflix one. It's just. I
Oh
mean,
well,
look, when
even
Netflix
worse.
gets a hold of anime or other foreign content, it can be done well.
Yeah, they've done some good ones.
Yeah, Agretzko, Seven Deadly Sins.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if Castlevania is entirely an anime or anime inspired, so that's not the best example, maybe. But there are definitely some good anime worth checking out on Netflix if you haven't already.
Yeah. Oh, there's one I'm thinking of. It is Super Crooks, and I think that was more on Netflix. Yep.
What's the overall concept of Super Crooks?
It's essentially superheroes. Are very are there. It's a superhero sort of animation or anime, and the superheroes are there, but they're not really big. So it's not like My Hero. Not everybody has superpowers, just a select few. Well,
So it's more like Sky High.
yeah, yeah. But this kid ends up learning he has powers, and then instead of he's trying to show off to a girl he likes, and he ends up killing people and causing a lot of problems. So he wanted to be a superhero, but he ends up being a crook using his powers for evil. And then it goes to this whole heist thing where at the end they end up turning into the good guys.
Yeah, that kind of sounds cliche in its own way. It's like how
Yeah,
Death Note, the character started out being a good guy. It's like, hey, you know what? No, fuck him. I don't like this guy. He cut me off at the line at Burger King the other day. He dies.
yeah, it's a very sort of predictable show, and it has very tropey and very sort of common. But I mean, I'd say it's worth a watch if you're into superheroes and animes and like the sort of concept of like heists and
Yeah, I'm
bad
gonna
guys
hold
being
on.
good.
I'm gonna put a pin in that. What is the plural of anime? Is it animes?
I don't know.
I feel like it's one of. I think it's like sheep, where either you say sheeps or sheep. Both would be accepted. No, wait, fish or fishes, I should say. Both are the
Yeah.
acceptable plural thereof.
Well, the way I just saw it was like so fish is for one fish or multiple of the same type of fish. If you're going to say fishes, it means multiple breeds of fish. So, if you have multiple koi's in a koi pond, like, yeah, these are my fish. But if you have other fish involved, these are my fishes.
All right, that's
For
definitely one for the Bucks.
that's what I literally actually just saw this morning on TikTok. So
Ugh, TikTok.
yeah, good old TikTok.
Yeah, you hear that's gonna get banned now?
They've been saying that for a couple of years now. We'll see
Eh,
what happens.
well, I'm not holding my breath either way. But regardless of if you are an anime fan or just getting into it, just keep in mind the harmful repercussions thereof. And I do say that lightly because anime, while it's becoming more popular, it's still heavily judgmented on if you are one.
Yes, there is still that sort of negative view on anime, especially like parents having their kids watch it. Well, which is fair. Is like any other show, or we see anime as it's animated, it's cartoons. That's the viewership of it. It's a cartoon. With a lot of the animes, kids probably shouldn't be watching. Now
Well,
there
I
are.
mean, look, just because it's animated doesn't necessarily mean it's cartoons. Like there's this little clip I saw on Instagram. It's like you see this. It's the My 1,000 Pound Life or something. It's some weird TSL crap. It's like
Mm-hmm.
what? It's low calories. It's like yeah, low calories doesn't mean no calories.
Yep.
Good old TLC bringing us fat people.
Yep.
Which side note, there's an episode of South Park you should watch. They actually kind of make fun of Honey Boo Boo, and it's hilariously done. They acknowledge Carbon for being fat. He's like, Carbon finally realized, like, no, it's like, oh, I'm denial. Oh, that's just big bone. Oh, that's muscle. I'm fat. I'm fat as fucking fuck. And now I know what I need to do about it. So he gets himself a rascal.
Oh man, is this some? I haven't watched South Park in probably a few years. None of the new stuff.
They make
It's
some changes. Like, do you know the character Token Black?
mm-hmm.
It's not Token, it's Tolkien.
No, it's Tolkien now.
Yeah. Which thought occurs? Lord of the Rings is an anime series. Would that be worth a watch?
Maybe.
I mean, the potential is there. Like I could see it being a Ghibli inspired craft, honestly. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I was gonna recommend, like say Hayao Miyazaki taking the helm on that, which again is a term I learned from One Piece. But regardless, I can definitely see that doing well.
I could see it being good if it was done right.
Well, I mean, was there any Hayao Miyazaki thing or he was a part of that didn't do well?
I mean, no,
I mean,
maybe
even his
not.
early days with, like, say, Sherlock Hound, where we discussed in our episode, that was still done pretty well, actually. I mean, it's
Yep.
not Princess Mononoke or Spirited Away good, but it's not god awful.
I mean, just as long as Amazon's not in control of it, like, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of hate to drop the A word, but yeah,
I ain't scared of Bezos.
you're not scared of Bezos yet.
Exactly.
Which again, South Park kind of homages. They kind of like the whole big brain thing where he can't talk, but he talks with you with his thoughts, kind of thing, like something straight out of an X-Men comic.
Yeah.
But yes, so in short, anime is definitely becoming more accepting, but that's just as a general at all. Specifically, there are people that'll look at you for liking anime, and you know what? Let them. They are just ignorant.
Yes, definitely. Anime isn't as the demon as it was. Everyone shouted out to be. It's like rock music. It's not bad. Anime is great. There's good ones. There's anime for everyone. Just make sure you find the right genre that
It's
you're
like a
interested in.
target audience kind of a thing. Like if you got a friend that's extremely got a hard on for live action stuff, don't waste your time.
Yeah.
But if they're a little more open, you just got to find out what they're into and what anime you can recommend for them.
There is, I mean, at this point, there's probably an anime for anybody out there.
I'd say just about, but we'll see. But I mean, granted, a fandom is only as bad as its fans. Like seriously, people get
Don't
over
talk
the
to the My
fight.
Hero fans.
No, I was going to say more like the sports fans that like, oh, so for you're a Packers fan in Giants country, I automatically hate you. Arr!
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, dude, it's just people playing sports that you're watching. Okay, you're making it sound like it's a freaking political discussion.
That's my favorite thing. Now it's you got this big sports fan who just sit there and watch other people play sports, but it's like they give you crap for watching other people play video games. It's like, well, I mean, you're technically the same thing.
Yes, I just love how the most masculine sport in existence is basically just two guys tackling each other just to get their hands on some balls.
Yep.
But yes, anime fans do suffer that trope as well. Like the can he beat up Goku meme, or the whole fan theories One Piece fans have to endure.
Or the One Piece versus Naruto debates that ruin the shows.
Honestly,
I think fans ruin the shows.
right, so it's not that the series are good or bad, it's just that the fans can be god awful.
Yeah.
So honestly, I wouldn't read too anything into the fact on what the fandom is like. But if you are a quote unquote regular person, and I use that term lightly because there's no such thing as a regular person, and you do like anime, that's fine. I mean, granted, you'll see the type of people that make up the fandom as proven with any convention you go to. Comic-Con, Otakon, Anime NYC, BotCon, which happened for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So while I'm not a fan of perpetuating stereotypes, I will acknowledge that they exist for one reason or another.
Yeah.
Case in the point, a lot of the anime fans that are there are socially awkward.
And I mean, that's most nerd gatherings.
Dorado. As long as they're not like over sexualizing drawings, it's like I find myself using this SpongeBob quote more often than not. Calm down, son. It's just a drawing, not the real thing.
Good old SpongeBob, man.
Yeah, back when it was funny, back when Steven Hillenburg manned the helm.
Imagine a SpongeBob anime.
Yeah, we kind of already have some of that in YouTube clippings, but again, that would it's like that anime. There's an anime that, you remember the TV show My Roommate's a Monkey, or My Gym Member's a Monkey or something?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, they kind of have that in an anime version. I think it was like the main character was like a wolf or something. Hang on, it's gonna kill me now. But that one was really weird because the male versions of these animal characters, they just look like anthropomorphic animals, like
My
the
gym partner's a monkey.
yeah, like the like something out of a BoJack Horseman universe. But the female parts are all human sized, and they just look like cat girls, and it's really weird.
Yeah.
The name of the anime I'm thinking of, it's gonna kill me, so I've got to look this up. It was Saiyan Academy. That was the anime. It was really weird. It kind of makes you wonder how biology works in that world. And on top of that, all the the faculty members were dinosaurs.
Huh.
Yeah, I think the principal was a Tyrannosaurus. The gym teacher was a Pteranodon or something. and et cetera, et cetera, and they look like traditional dinosaurs do, but just with more human-esque clothing. Well, I guess that's kind of an oxymoronic thing because all clothing is human-esque.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it really is interesting, but I think this just kind of goes to show that anime really doesn't have barriers as far as
No.
its creativity go.
Oh, they don't.
Like, I would say something out of a pre-90s Disney. They just had no restraints on what they could and couldn't do.
Yeah.
Which I think this is something else we need to talk about, like giving labels to characters that have not been established. Like you dived into Dragon Ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you heard people say Piccolo is black?
Uh, not honestly, not too often.
And it's something I've come across where they say Piccolo is black. It's like, he is a green slug-like alien. What makes you think that?
Right? Yeah, I know. We've always seen him as green. Now there is I mean, I can't remember his name. He was another sort of green character, but because he was dressed differently. I know some people were saying, "Oh, he might be black," or would be portrayed as black.
That's the
I can't
problem
remember
I
what character I'm
personally
thinking of
have,
though.
is that you're giving your own labels for characters that have been established as such. But there are times where it is acknowledged. One Piece is a phenomenal example. It does take place in its own world. There's no doubt about that. But it's been
Yeah,
confirmed by Oda that if each of the Straw Hats lived in the real world, or I guess our world, I should say, they would each have their own ethnicities. Luffy would be Brazilian, Zoro is Japanese, Nami would be from Sweden, Usopp would be somewhere from Africa. I'm going to say South Africa, but don't quote me on that. Sanji would be French. Chopper is Canadian. Robin would be Russian, which explains why she was tan pre-time skip, white time skip, but I'm not going to get into that rabbit hole. Frankie would be American. Brooke would be Austrian. And Jinbei was surprising. Jinbei would be Indian.
yeah. And I
Yeah,
mean, it fits.
I mean, I've always seen him as more of a Polynesian-esque thing, like one of those big Samoans.
Yeah, yeah. That could work. That could work too.
Oh, the whole whale shark theme. But I digress. The point is that when Japanese creators create something for anime, they don't give it labels to the same degree Americans do. Like every time you see a character in the States, you got to break down what it is. It's like, okay, so this is a black cisgender male with homosexual tendencies.
Yeah.
You ever notice that every time a new character comes out, they got to dissect it?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Japan, they just create the characters for the sake of creating characters.
Yeah. No, we are. We like to tear things apart.
Which honestly, it's just sometimes you just got to turn off your brain. I mean, granted, obviously, when it does happen, you got to appreciate when it happens. But don't go looking for things that aren't necessarily there.
Yeah.
So
Which
I
is where
think,
we get all these crazy. I mean, that's the big issue with One Piece. This is how we get all these crazy conspiracies. People trying to tie one thing to another, and yeah,
yeah, that's just one rabbit hole. So whether it's the whole frowned upon concept of being an anime fan in the States, the over sexualized tendencies that would turn most people off, or the customs that we're not necessarily familiar with because it relates more to Japan. But I just find it funny that Japan's big bread and butter are anime and manga, considering that it's been a thriving country for several years.
yeah. I mean, it's what works.
It does work. But with that said, Tom, thank you so much for swinging by today.
Well, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
One more time, who are you? What do you do? How can people get a hold of you?
I am Thomas Bowman. Like I said before, I have two podcasts. One's from Friend to Weeb. The other one is Talking Dirty. You can find me. I post a lot of my stuff on Facebook at Dirty Entertainment. That's DERTY. Um, I do like a talk show. I'm starting on Fridays or every other Friday on my Twitch, which is DirtyCaz, DERTYQAZ. And you can always just email me at fromfriendtoweeb@gmail.com if you're interested in anything I do.
Terrific. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to support me on Patreon or on Anchor. But if you're a little low on cash, that's fine. Just recommend me to all your friends and family if you like the show, and add hashtag Geek Talk with Tyler or Talk Geek with Tyler if you like the live show. But no matter what you do by the end of the day, remember one very important thing: stay geeky.